Hello everyone, I'm Liz Bruner and welcome to CNGtv. One of the many reasons that CRE professionals join CoreNet is because of the numerous programs and offerings and initiatives that they have for all of their members. And one of those is our new CNGtv site and our new podcast series. Working on both of those is Alexis Carthan, and welcome you're from Atlanta, yes?
Yes.
Excellent, well welcome to Boston. What prompted CoreNet to launch not only the CNGtv site, but also the podcast series?
So one of the main reasons why we wanted to launch these two initiatives is because we wanted to engage our members even more than they already do. So we're a global association, so we wanted to find a way to get to those members that don't always go to the Knowledge Center to read these white papers, and also make things a little bit more visually engaging and just kind of keep up with the times a little bit.
Exactly.
All of our partners have podcasts, and so we thought it would be a great opportunity for us to kind of jump in there as well.
What kind of content can people look for both on the podcast and also on the site?
So a lot of the content that we're going to be producing is actually through our members. So what you'll see is what you would normally read in a white paper or a large report, but it'll be more condensed, like I said, more visually appealing and that sort of thing, professional related.
So you really want members to actually contribute to the content on both of these things.
Absolutely.
You said white papers, so give me a couple of topics that you think would be fun for people to contribute on.
Workplace, that's always a big thing. Co-working and sustainability are two of our biggies right now. So that's what we hear a lot about. Also a lot of things dealing with AI and technology just across the board.
Well, we invite everybody to contribute, yes? All right. Excellent. Thanks, Alexis. Have fun with both of these.
I will.
I'm sure you will. Until next time, I'm Liz Bruner. Hello everyone, I'm Liz Bruner and welcome back to our CNGtv studio here at the North American Global Summit in Boston at the Heinz Convention Center. Wellness, that is a huge topic in the workplace these days and a major priority for many organizations. And my guest right now, Amy Blankson, is here to talk about wellness. And you co-founded GoodThink, and you're focusing on how to cultivate happiness in this digital era. How do we do that? I mean, really, it seems like such a huge topic, Amy.
We have never been more overwhelmed, more fragmented as a society than we are today. We are constantly overwhelmed by our text messages, social media, interruptions, notifications, sports updates.
Yes.
And as all this information is flooding into our space, suddenly people are realizing the value of being able to cultivate places in their life where they can think and they can focus and they can flow better. And so it's not about getting rid of technology, it's really about how do we find balance in doing what we need to do for work and life, but also being able to use technology better. And part of doing that is just really starting with awareness, thinking about how we use technology now and how we want to be using it. And so I spend a lot of time with GoodThink in my own organization trying to figure out how to help companies to create a more positive digital culture.
I like to say, let's create a safe zone.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yes.
You have written a book, The Future of Happiness, and you say that there are 5 strategies about how people can not only survive, but really thrive in that digital era. What would be some of those that you can share with us?
So there are 5 strategies. The first is to stay grounded. So really thinking about what drives you to want to use technology. And this really comes back to thinking about when, where, why, how we're using technology and how we want to be. Because sometimes there's a gap between I really want to be more present with my family, and yet I have this really important email that's tearing me apart. How do I figure out whether or not to take that call? And it comes back to really thinking about intention. So that was the first strategy. And the second one comes back to knowing yourself. I call it know thyself, almost like a Socratic moment here where we're thinking about how do we use technology currently? Not just how do I think I use it, but let's actually look at the data.
Right?
Yes.
And now I think on Apple iPhones, there's an update that says how much screen time you're using,
Yes,
which
that's
I don't know if that's a
screen time.
good thing or a bad thing.
It's a little scary,
It is
right?
a little scary. But I think I read on your website too, the average smartphone user checks their phone 150 times a day.
A day.
So now if we're getting that time telling us how much time we're doing, that's amazing.
Yes. I mean, if you just do a simple math of, I think I check my phone 150 times a day and it takes me a minute to open my phone, check it, and close it, That's 2.5 hours of your
lot of
day
time.
that you're spending opening and closing your phone. And 10 years ago, 11 years ago, before the iPhone came out, that was not part of our world. So we have these new competing interests that we really have to be forward thinking about. If we want to be our best selves, how do we spend our time, and what are some ways that we can maybe cut back so that we can do other things that we really want to do?
And I'm going to tell people to buy your book and figure out what the other ones are. But so do you think the digital age has hindered us or helped us overall? What's your theory?
So I love the quote of William Shakespeare when he said, "There's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so."
Oh, that is good.
It is good. And it really encapsulates for me this moment we're at in history where I can use technology for good. I can use the same technology for bad. And you could use the airplane as an example. Airplanes can cause massive damage, as we saw in 9/11. They can also become the thing that flies you to see your grandchildren when you are away from home. The same technology can be used for good or bad, but how are we going to actively try to use it for the best possible ways? And so I really try to focus a lot on which technologies out there are leading the way. How can we follow the path in a way that will move us towards the society that we want to be?
And I think too, I called it a safe zone, but it's about setting boundaries in some cases of saying, here's when I'm going to do this and here's when I'm going to do that. And that's a very hard thing for a lot of people overall.
It is, especially when we know that we live in this attention economy, and these devices are actually highly attuned to being distracting. They have been studied.
Right.
There's millions of dollars
Created to be
invested.
addicting,
They're
right?
created to be addicting.
Yes.
So we have to be that much stronger to be a step ahead and say, okay, no, I know when I get tempted that it takes about 7 seconds to delete an app or to reinstall it. So if I'm really tempted to keep checking, for instance, the news, and it's become something that is keeping me back from who I want to be, I'll just delete that app for 7 days or 21 days until I feel like I'm under control, and then I can reinstall it. But these are things that we can learn, these tips and tricks to be able to maximize our time.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that these apps were created to be addictive.
They were.
They were created to be addictive. It's kind of fascinating.
We don't have to fall prey to that.
No, we
either.
don't. We
No,
don't. We don't. We can walk through a Vegas casino and not gamble,
That's
right?
right, exactly.
How do you personally keep your sanity and boost your happiness?
So I get to travel the world and speak to people who are truly inspiring, and they are constantly challenging me and giving me new ideas for how to live my life in a different way. So I steep myself in positive psychology literature. I practice positive habits. It's something that I have learned as a work ethic and not something that just comes upon you as like, oh, I feel happy in this moment, but I really have to work towards it. So I practice every morning before I touch the keys on my keyboard. I'll stop and watch my breath so that I can focus on what is my intention for the day. How am I about to use this technology, and what am I going to do within my space? What's most important? Those little tips and tricks make such a difference in our day.
They really do. They honest and true. As someone who practices those things too, I completely
fantastic.
100% agree.
Awesome.
Wonderful to have you with us, Amy.
Thank you so much,
you
Liz.
so much.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it, and good luck with the book.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Welcome back to CNGtv. I'm Liz Bruner, your host here at the North American CoreNet Global Summit in Boston, Massachusetts. And joining me from Atlanta is Brittany Webster. Brittany, welcome.
Thank you.
Mentorship is key in every profession because it really oftentimes can be that thing that gets you to the next rung on the career ladder. You are an author, you're a publisher, you're a speaker and an entrepreneur, and you say you're on a mission right now to help people become their best selves, and mentorship is a piece of that. Explain that to me.
Yes, so I believe that mentors are able to bring out the best parts of you and help you put you through things that you may not know what to do, and they can help you get to the next level. So everyone needs a mentor, no matter what level of life that you're in.
I agree completely, and CoreNet is kind of looking to that as well. You launched the Mentor March back in January of 2018. How does that work, and how can someone get involved?
Yes, so the Mentor Match program is a program that we have internally for our mentors, and for our members. So members are able to either be a mentor or a mentee and connect with another corporate real estate professional from their industry, and they'll be able to work with each other on different things like professional development or just general business skills, whatever they need.
And how are people matched up?
It's an online system, so you fill out information about yourself, and then you go in and you are able to actually select the mentor that best fits your needs.
Wow, and how many people are taking advantage of this
We have over 500 participants from over 26 countries right now.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, you launched in January, so I imagine you've been doing a little bit of tweaking since you started to just make sure that the members' needs are being met. Is there anything new that we need to know about since you launched?
Yes, so we actually have a new training video program. Self-guided tutorials from topics ranging from professional development to even the Me Too movement, and how to just navigate through that as you're in mentoring relationships. So that's online, available to mentors.
And speaking of online, where exactly can they find out more about the Mentor Match program on the CoreNet Global website?
We have a banner right on the homepage, so CoreNetGlobal.org, you'll see a big green banner.
Big green banner, Mentor March, right? Mentor Match,
yes.
That's right. Well, maybe they're marching to match, right?
Exactly.
Good luck with the program, and great to meet you today. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
And until next time, I'm Liz Bruner. Hello everyone, I'm Liz Bruner, and welcome back to the CoreNet Global Studios here at the Summit in Boston. And joining me once again is our chairman, David Kamen. Good to have you back, David. Appreciate it. How's this Boston Summit been for you, the experience so far?
Absolutely overwhelming. Everything that we had expected and prepared for in terms of turnout and speakers and content has blown me away.
It's been a record turnout, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the largest summit ever in terms of attendance, and just unbelievably positive feedback. Just the buzz has been outstanding. We still have really a full 24 hours, and it's just going to continue to get better and better.
I've had the chance to walk around not only the exhibit hall, but talk to a lot of people in between. They're all kinds of ages. There's a lot of buzz, a lot of energy, to your point. And what I find so fascinating is there are people who've been involved with CoreNet for many, many years, even prior to its current existence. And then there are a lot of young professionals as well. How are you attracting them and trying to bring them in and supporting them in the CoreNet organization?
Well, I think young professionals come into a real estate role. And then the dominance of CoreNet Global as the industry go-to, so to speak, attracts them naturally. And the challenge then is, what can we do to keep them engaged, keep everyone stimulated, but also not just focus on the young, but all age.
Right.
And the diversity that we have, even in a geography, is something that we've really been able to manage, because we're focusing on it so much. So it's when they come in, we really focus on what can we do to not just connect, but to stay connected. And we have a tremendous outreach program through our Mentor Match, the way that the board connects. It's an incredibly approachable organization.
It is. You talked about the Mentor Match. What other key initiatives are out there that would serve the corporate real estate professional? What other programs do you have that would really be of interest to folks?
Well, our ongoing program and the beginning of our journey around Future Forward, trying to define where our association is in regards to the future of the profession, is one. Our learning is by far unmatched anywhere with any other association. We've just revamped all the courses, so they're updated with new content, new speakers, much more relevance. So the education, the Future Forward, and we as a CoreNet Global Board take a proactive approach to outreach to new members. We make phone calls every month to connect with them. And again, just the mentor match and just the approachability. Whether you're young, old, US-based, from another continent, there's just so much connectivity, and this is just really a room of 3,300 friends.
It really is. I've really enjoyed talking to people from Brazil, from India, from the UK, Canada, and of course, crisscrossing the country from east to west, who've all descended here in Boston, in our city, to be a part of this summit. It must make you feel so proud.
Just everything. I mean, I can't tell you, everybody keeps talking about how we're doing better and better and better. It just continues to grow, and for 3 days to keep focused for 3 days is really difficult, because this is not what people do. They have day jobs.
Yes.
And I have not seen a bit of a lull or a lack of enthusiasm or anticipation for what's next.
Nor have I, because I've been walking around talking to people about what they're enjoying. Awesome. Great to have you stopping by. Thanks so much. Continue to enjoy the rest of the summit, David.
Well, thank you very much.
And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Hello everyone, I'm Liz Bruner, and we are here at North American Global Summit for CoreNet in Boston at the Heinz Convention Center. And my guest today actually has a CoreNet New England connection, right?
I do.
You do indeed. Del Boyette is affiliated with CoreNet New England, and you were one of the inaugural board members for CoreNet Global.
Yes. I was.
Fantastic. Great to have you stopping by. You have such a fantastic background, and you have worked in economic development for both Arkansas and Georgia and advised companies on location strategy for many, many years now. And I would imagine there's a host of factors that come into play when somebody is trying to choose to build an operation someplace. Why is it so challenging, though, to find the great talent that you need in order to do that?
Well, you know, in economic development, especially in the location strategy and the location analysis process, it changes, it seems, from year to year as to what the most important factor is. But the one thing that has been totally 100% consistent the last 3 years and well into the future is predicted to be is workforce. And understanding what the needs of the workforce are and understanding what you need to do as a state and a community to ensure that the workforce is going to be there long term and in the future. You know, I've heard this story years ago at CoreNet, and it was a New England chapter CoreNet member, Sarah Abrams, that said when they were siting a facility in Jacksonville, she said the one thing that they could do is convince us that our workforce would be there for us for the next 25 years. So, being there for the next 25 years, we're dealing with communities today that have an aging workforce. And on the economic development side, when you are dealing with a community and the workforce is aging out, then those existing employers are going to have to replace those workers. So not only for new companies that are looking to invest is the workforce critical, it is also critical for those existing companies that are having to replace that talent as they're aging out.
Yeah.
I mean, you're from Illinois, right?
Well, originally a long time ago.
Originally a long time from Illinois, but you think about the Rust Belt, and you think about those manufacturers and the age of that workforce, they're aging out, they're going to have to be replaced.
Yes, they are. When it comes to picking a new location, there's so many factors: competition, incentive programs, jurisdiction. What are the trends going forward, and what is essential for an organization, a business, to say, hey, this is where I want my company to be?
You know, it used to be, and even with innovation and technology, people say, well, a company can be anywhere and still be
Is that
successful.
true? I don't
and
think
still be
so.
successful. I don't think that's true. I don't think it's true. I think you've got to be where the culture is right for your company to succeed long term. It used to be that a product could be, quote, manufactured in one place and you could be anywhere as long as you were close to your market and had access to your markets. But today, I would say it's more, you have to be more intent with being in a location that matches the culture of your company.
You bring up an interesting thought, because one of the biggest pending deals, obviously here in Boston over at the Seaport District, is potentially Amazon's second headquarters. So you talk about culture.
Sure it is.
What kind of a place does Amazon look for? Do other competitors look for besides the culture?
Well, you know, there's all kinds of stories as it relates to Amazon, and everybody likes to think that they have the inside track as it relates to Amazon. Well, Holly Sears Sullivan, who's leading that, happens to be a really good friend of mine, and I love her dearly, and she's such a professional, and she's doing a great job with that location strategy for HQ2. But, you know, even when Holly and I have conversations, we certainly don't talk about that project, you know, and I don't ask about that project. And I think people surmising things and insinuating things and making predictions about things, that may be fun, but it's not right. It's not right. Amazon has a very critical decision to make as to where their next HQ2, where their next headquarters is going to be. And most importantly, the location that they choose has a very critical decision to make as to how they're going to meet their needs long term.
Sure.
Can they meet their needs long term? Because you can't mess this one up.
No, I mean,
This
it's a
one
big
has
deal.
to absolutely be right. It has to be right for Amazon, and it has to be right for the geography that they end up locating in. And it's going to impact the entire region. It's going to impact multiple states, depending on where it locates.
How much impact do tariffs and trade wars and renegotiating NAFTA, Brexit have on a location decision in general?
Well, I think that, you know, in some states right now and some companies, I mean, I don't really want to talk that much about the tariff issue because it seems like it gets very political right
But
now.
on a general specific, I mean, it does have impact.
It does.
Yeah.
It totally has impact. And look at some of the companies in the South right now, especially the European automotive assembly companies that have located here. It's an issue for them right now. And you know, the states are typically, quote, red states, and the red states are basically going up against the policies of a red administration. So it's something that's causing problems, I think, in the economic development arena, and hopefully those things will be corrected short term rather than a long term thing.
Well, we appreciate your insights into all of this today, and thanks for coming back to New England for a little bit and kind of connecting with all your CoreNet New England folks. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Liz. It's always good to see you.
Good to see you too. And thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you soon. Hello, everyone. I'm Liz Bruner, and welcome back to the CNGtv studio. Did you know that by the year 2030, Gen Z will represent 20% of the workforce, and that's actually outnumbering millennials? I found that to be an interesting fact and something Dr. Christina Banks from the University of California, Berkeley knows a lot about. So good to have you here and shed some light on this topic for us today.
Sure.
Let's first talk about wellness and the goals and the needs. How do you define a healthy workplace today?
Well, a healthy workplace is one that supports employee health, well-being, and their productivity.
And a lot more companies are trying to do that today.
Yes, they're trying to.
Trying to is the key word, right?
Right, and I think what's holding everything back is that companies are searching for the one answer. And so they're looking at, you know, what is the thing I need to bring into the workplace that's going to turn this around?
And there's probably not one answer.
Oh, of course there isn't, because you can think about your own health and well-being and how many things affect your own, and so we need to look at it from a lot of different factors. And so we don't really know how all these factors fit together, and that's really the primary purpose of our interdisciplinary center at Berkeley, is to figure out what are all the different ways that we need to support people's health and well-being, and then how do we create that in organizations in ways that are cost-effective, that are easy to implement, and actually are things that employees want. A lot of times what is introduced are things that employees never ask for and doesn't make a difference.
Right,
So,
exactly. And let's talk too, I imagine that there's some cultural differences that can come into play too. How does that factor in?
so that's really a good question. So we know that people are different, right? And we can divide them up by generation, by ethnicity, by gender. All of these things kind of factor into what people need. And I think what we need to get right to and figure out what will give us the best answer is what will create need satisfaction. So we have a way of analyzing what people really need at their basic level, and then what are the things in the workplace that need to be created, modified, and developed new in order to support need satisfaction.
Let's turn it now to the CRE professional and the psychological effects, because whether it's open space or closed offices, I would imagine all of that has an impact.
Absolutely. In fact, I have really been attracted to this area because CRE holds the key to much of what the experience is for employees.
How so?
Well, can you imagine going to a workplace where, first of all, there's no place to put away your belongings and lock them up for safety reasons.
And that's the case in a lot of spaces now.
Particularly when there's free addressing, and going to a workplace where it's just one frustration after another. It could be the technology doesn't work, or they have to work with people who are really noisy so they can't do their concentration. So CRE actually has a big impact on how people work and how they feel about the workplace. So in particular, we can look at this experience that people have and say, what is the kind of experience that they really need to have? And because of our studies, we have isolated 7 different needs that
Oh my
people
gosh.
have, and the qualities that we need to build into the workplace in order to support those needs.
Wow.
So it directly translates into what's the furniture, what's the workspace, how much natural light there can be, whether you bring in biophilia, which means plants and natural elements. We know a lot about these factors.
But we're just not kind of bringing them all together,
We're
right?
not.
We're not bringing
We
them
are
all
not.
together. I think everybody wants to flourish in
Yes.
their workplace, no matter what your generation may be. But how can we think about the next gens, the Gen Z people that are coming up, because they too have their own different needs compared to Gen X, Gen Y, baby boomers, everything else.
They are really interesting people.
How so from your perspective?
Well, we have done a number of studies with Gen Zs, and we'll be presenting on that here at the conference. But in conversations with them and in exercises that they go through where they actually design the office that would be most supportive of their needs, we find a number of things. One is they want both assigned space and unassigned space.
Okay.
Now, isn't that
Yeah.
interesting? Because they want a personalized space, but they also want to go to another place and work whenever they want to. And another thing I can mention is that as social beings, they're kind of shy when it comes to interpersonal interaction.
Well, it's because of all of this.
Yes.
Technology.
Exactly. And so, in fact, they were saying we need to have in a workplace a built-in event or a built-in space that will attract people
So that they will
my age.
actually meet.
Right, and
And
that
connect.
they don't have to actually talk to somebody and say, hey, let's go there and
say.
talk. But if they go there, they can kind of be part of whatever that event is.
The activity, right?
And then
From
turn
there.
around and form the relationships. Isn't that interesting?
It's so different from our generation, I think. But
Right.
hey, I guess every generation has its thing, right? Dr. Christina Banks, thanks so much for stopping by. A pleasure to speak with you, and good luck here at the summit. I hope
Thank
it's a
you
great
so
time for
much.
you. And thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you next time. Hello, everyone. I'm Liz Bruner. I'm excited to have my next guest joining me, Josh Packard, who is the CEO of the Packard Group, where your work, I think, is fascinating because you help organizations try to understand why customers, clients, members have left.
Sure.
Really interesting, and more importantly, how to get them back, right? How can an organization create an effective strategy that's innovative when there are so many unknowns today?
So I think that there are a lot of unknowns in terms of the particulars, in terms of the
Sure.
details, but the one thing that we do know is that the world in 3 years is going to look different than it does right now. So the big thing that we work on is getting our clients to understand that they need to build resilient organizations that have the capacity for change. And there's a lot of the basic dynamics that govern how organizations change, that's the same. So no matter what kinds of things are coming down the line, you can be ready for them.
Do you still think it's complicated, though? More today than it's ever been?
Well, I think it's complicated only if we're working from this perspective that I think a lot of us work from, where we think of our organizations as being filled of individuals, and the reality is that our organizations are filled with teams. They're filled with groups. So often our managers and executives are working not with incorrect information, but with incomplete information.
Sure.
So I come along as a sociologist, we study groups of people, and so we really help sort of fill in that missing gap of like, okay, so it's not like this person doesn't like you, and it's not that this person doesn't like you, and it's not that, it's that there are these group level things that are happening that we need to sort of mitigate and prepare for and plan for that can help bring people along.
We hear a lot about innovation today and trying to get people to move the dial a little bit. Is it easier for a smaller or startup to have more innovation than a bigger established company?
Well, it is. I mean, the organizational science would prove this, that after a company grows to a certain size, or if it's been around for a while, and it's not as long as you think. I mean, it only takes
the average?
like a couple of years or so,
Really?
maybe 30 employees before the founder, the CEO, can stand up there and yell all she wants. Nothing's going to happen without a system in place. When it's small, and I run a small research lab in terms of numbers at our university. I can tell them to do every week. I can influence the entire culture by just telling them to do what I want, right? But once it gets beyond a certain size of 25, 30, 35 employees, you really have to be intentional and systematic about the kind of change that you want to see.
So is that the key for the larger companies to be innovative?
It really is. There's the same organizational pressures that sort of push us towards conformity. Well, they also they have this unique way of creating entrepreneurs inside of your organization and creating innovators inside of your organization. We can draw on the science to help identify them. So there's a little bit of science there, but there's a lot of it is just a mindset and a systems issue.
You talk about being a sociologist and a researcher and professor at University of Northern Colorado, and one of the observations that I found fascinating when I was kind of learning a little bit about you before we were going to talk today was that you say that people in the middle of business sometimes have no idea what their business really is. That's a shocking statement.
Well, this comes from Walter Isaacson's podcast called Trailblazers, and it is this nice way of summing up that we can get so beholden to the processes.
Okay.
You know, these things that govern our day-to-day lives that we think we're winning if we're just getting better at those, and if we're executing them perfectly. But when our focus is only there, it sort of shuts us off to the possibility of what we need to be paying attention to down the line or what's coming around the corner. So this is where we get into that. The example that he uses in that podcast is about the music industry. They thought they were in the music business, they were in the physical thing business, because as soon as the physical things went away, the companies went bankrupt, right? And I think the same is true for us in any field, even corporate real estate, where we can think that we're in the real estate business or we're in the sort of workplace business, and yet what consumes 90 to 95% of our time, it's working with vendors, outsourcing things, client,
right?
Contracts, right? And we can get so embedded in that we take our eye off of this larger issue about how is this really structuring work that needs to get done for my company.
All fascinating work that you're doing, and we're so glad that you stopped by to join us today.
I'm thrilled to be here.
A pleasure to meet you. Enjoy the summit, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Hello everyone, I'm Liz Bruner and welcome to CoreNet Global TV. We're premiering our channel here at the Boston Summit. And my guest tonight is an artist, an inventor, and a professor at UC Berkeley where he focuses on robotics. In fact, you had the first robot on the internet. Please welcome Ken Goldberg. Good to see you, Ken.
Thank you.
Thanks for stopping by. Your work is
me.
fascinating to me.
Thank you.
And if I'm not mistaken, you and your students are pursuing research in machine learning, which is somewhat related to AI, right?
Well, absolutely.
Sort of, kind of?
Definitely. So AI, machine learning, and artificial intelligence, and robotics are all kind of intertwined.
Yes.
So there's a lot of advances that are happening recently.
That's amazing. Now, tomorrow you're speaking at the general session. What's next for the human experience? So what's next?
So the most important thing I want to tell everyone is that humans still have a few good years left.
Okay, I'm relieved.
Definitely. No, there's a lot of hype out there. And I think it's really important as a researcher to reassure people that these problems are very, very difficult. I mean, what people do is very subtle and complex. So take as an example, driving. So there's a lot of people saying that we're going to replace all the Uber and Lyft drivers very soon. No.
I don't think that's going to happen.
That's not going to happen. You're right, because it's very, very subtle. Because if you get in traffic and it gets complicated, there's a lot of nuances and subtleties. Sure. So that's one example. Truck drivers, bus drivers, taxi drivers, they're actually going to have jobs for a very long time. But the same is true for anyone who works in construction, in machine shops, in industry, restaurants.
What jobs might be disappearing 10, 20, 30 years as a result of AI?
So I do think about stockbrokers.
Oh, really?
For example. Well, if you're a stockbroker and your job is just to sort of move stocks around and pick stocks, that can somewhat be starting to be automated. But it's the human part of it, where you have to call on the phone and talk to a person who just lost 20% of their portfolio.
Right.
That is a very human skill.
Absolutely.
And we are nowhere near close to having a robot that can do that.
I'm so glad to hear that because I'm all about face-to-face connection and the human experience.
So journalists, your job is totally secure. I mean, some people say journalists are going to be replaced because
there are anchors who are robots in some countries.
I know. But but what you do is what you're doing right now is super subtle and complex, and there's no way we're nowhere near having robots.
Okay,
do that.
good. That's good to know.
Yes.
For the non-tech person, how do you explain cloud robotics, and how does that impact the CRE professional?
Well, the idea of the cloud is that we're going to increasingly have more connectivity to the cloud. So the idea of Internet of Things is definitely coming. So there's something called 5G, which is the 5th generation of networking, and that's actually going to happen. You're going to start seeing that roll out in 2019, and it's going to mean faster connectivity, more devices connected. So there'll be cameras, devices. So So one area you'll see it is in security. So a lot of homes and businesses will have security devices that will all be linked up.
I'll be
cameras.
talking to each other.
They'll be talking to each other.
Yeah.
And so that can be good, and that'll enhance security, but it's also got a dark side because it could mean that you could be observed or surveilled.
Yeah, and that concerns a lot of people.
Right.
That security piece and that privacy
Absolutely.
piece.
Right, and it should, because one of the things is that we have to be careful. It's like a double-edged sword. Like,
Sure.
you know, the whole idea of George Orwell or something like that. Like we want to be protected, but at the same time, what are we giving up for that?
Good question. As I said, you're an artist and an inventor, and it's sort of like your right brain and your left brain seem to be working pretty equally here. And between the science you work on and the creative side, you have had artwork that has appeared in 70 exhibits. Describe your artwork for us.
Well, the thing I think about with art is that it's a way of challenging the assumptions. And artists, when they're working, are always trying to provoke and challenge conventional wisdom, the status quo. So in some way, what I see is that as an artist, I'm sort of critiquing what I do as a day job, but that keeps me honest in one sense, but it also helps me be creative about new ideas. So, I mean, all researchers have to be actually quite creative. You have to be thinking outside the box.
Always.
Yeah, and that's actually related to privacy, I believe. You have to, if you're going to do something different, you have to be able to be different than the standard.
Right.
You have to be thinking differently.
Right.
And if you're thinking differently, you have to be able to be comfortable standing outside of the mainstream.
Well, as an inventor, you have to be outside of the mainstream. You really have to be creative. So it makes sense to me that both of those are working equally for you, which is wonderful.
You have to take chances, and
you
that's
do.
the thing is that there's risks. So if you look at any inventor, they're going to take risks. They're going to fail a certain amount of the time, but they have to be okay
That's
with
how
that.
that spurs you on, right? Thomas Edison, he'd stop
Absolutely.
before the light bulb.
Right.
Now, you have also co-written a number of films that have been at the Sundance Film Festival, and you've been nominated for an Emmy Award? What is all of this about? I mean,
Well,
really?
I mean, that was a tough year because we were up against the New York Times in the category, and they had two nominations that we were up, and we were like, are we going to really beat the New York Times? But I have to say, I work with my wife. She's a filmmaker, and we do films. We make films about social issues like robots and Google Glass. We have a whole story about that, and so we're really interested in using film to sort of convey these messages or get people thinking about these things. And visually, it really, I think it helps. And so tomorrow I'll actually be talking about that with, use a lot of slides and visual images to sort of get people thinking about the things they're reading in the newspaper and why they might not necessarily be true.
Aha. Well, that was sounding like a tease to me for tomorrow morning, so people can join you at very early at 8 o'clock in the morning, right?
8 o'clock, right.
8 o'clock in the morning. You're going to be on East Coast, West Coast time. You're going to be a little confused, but that's all right.
I'll make it.
Ken, thanks so much for stopping
Liz,
by.
thank
A pleasure
you.
to spend
Really
time
great
with
talking
you.
to
Look
you.
forward to your remarks tomorrow.
Thank
And
you.
thanks so much for joining us in CNGtv. I'll see you next time. Hello everyone, I'm Liz Bruner, and we have had a fantastic few days here at the Heinz Convention Center with CoreNet's North American Global Summit. And I'm joined right now by Jan Pierce, who basically heads up all the learning. And so it's great to have you here today. Such fantastic work that you're doing. You're always looking to enhance the value for your members. And I know you've recently launched a program called the QPCR program. What is that program about?
Well, it's really difficult to say. It's harder to say than it is to participate in.
Okay.
It's the Qualified Professional of Corporate Real Estate program.
Okay.
And it's designed for two groups of people primarily, those who have fewer than 5 years experience in the corporate real estate profession, or those who have been in the profession for a number of years, who may have had one narrow area focus in their work and they want to learn more generally about the profession in general that might help them as they move into different roles.
So you really are targeting just about everybody. You've got the newbies who maybe just joined and are looking for more leadership opportunities and learning and growth, as well as those who've been in the industry for a while. So those are the people who can benefit from this program.
Yeah, so right now we've got about half and half
Okay.
in our pool of people that are participating in the program. And I'm very excited that some of our very first people who joined the program last February when it was announced, as a result of being a part of the summit here, have earned enough credit now to be the first to earn the designation. So it's very exciting.
That is very exciting.
Yes.
What kinds of things are they learning in this program?
Well, we wanted it to be very practical, particularly for that audience of folks that are just new to the profession. So it consists of business and leadership skills, basic corporate real estate knowledge across finance areas, working with the organization, a number of things that everybody who's in the profession should know. And then we also added a really interesting dimension to that, where there's 15 hours of credit that you earn from networking, building a professional network, being a volunteer, participating in mentor match is the most popular way that people are earning that 15 volunteer hours for the QPCR.
So there's a specific designation that they get.
Yes.
And it sounds like they have to earn certain credits hours to get that designation.
Right, so there's a total of 80 hours.
Wow, okay.
It's a subscription model. They purchase access to a pool, like a buffet, of content. And out of that, they choose 30 hours in the corporate real estate knowledge area and 35 hours of business and leadership skills. 15 volunteer hours equals 80, and they earn the designation.
Wow, and I guess then there's no time limit, I would imagine, because some people might have more time initially versus some people time later. So
it's a 2-year subscription.
Okay.
So they've got the 2 years to complete
That's
it.
doable.
Yes, and so we've designed it so you can complete it in a year. It's really hard to do it in less than a year,
yeah.
but a little bit less maybe. but you have the 2 years to do it. So if you think about it, 80 hours of education over 2 years is really pretty doable.
It is doable.
Yes.
You sound very passionate about learning and growth, and I know that's a tremendous mission and mantra for CoreNet. What makes that
Sure.
also special for you?
Well, I think being a part of a learning organization is very exciting. As you can see just by looking around the summit, CoreNet is very innovative, forward-thinking, and we want to bring all of that into our learning programs because everybody learns from each other, and providing peer-to-peer networking. We do a lot of this virtually. Most of the QPCR is done online. You can do it from anywhere in the world and still have the opportunity to learn from your peers, which is very powerful.
It is. Well, Jan, we wish you continued success with the program. Thanks so much for stopping by
Thank you,
today.
Liz. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it very well. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Welcome back to CNGtv. I'm Liz Bruner, your host, and we would like to welcome Kathy Godwin from Atlanta to Boston. Thanks so much for joining us.
Sure.
You are truly at the core of CoreNet in helping all of their members get the most out of the organization. CoreNet is global. So
Yes.
how many countries are we talking, and how many members do you have now?
So there's 55 countries that are represented at CoreNet Global, and we have 11,000 members. We just reached.
11,000. That is huge.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Why become a member of CoreNet Global?
Probably the main reason is access. And what I mean by that is access to other members who are in the same profession, access to our Knowledge Center online, which is our library of research and resources, and access to special programs that only members can participate in, such as Mentor Match. You'll hear more about that later.
Yes. Talk to me about some of the programs that may be not quite as well known, but that people really can take advantage of.
So the learning programs here at the summit, as well as at the chapter level, is really what people enjoy most. I think they are drawn to the education programs, and they also maintain their membership for the networking opportunities.
Do you have any special promotions that people need to know about right now?
So right now, in the month of October, we have a special promotion that is 15 months for the price of 12 for new members, and for renewing members, there's a discount of 5%, and at the summit, we are giving away Starbucks gift cards when you renew your membership.
A good time to take advantage of all of that right now. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for stopping by, Kathy, and have a great couple of days here in Boston.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'll see you next time. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to CNGtv. We're coming to you from the Heinz Convention Center here in Boston. Over the past 3 decades, employees' needs and their working styles have changed dramatically. And Keith Persky is a workplace expert, right? Is that accurate? Workplace expert.
That's
okay,
what I
very
am.
good.
There you go.
You're really helping clients take all these changes into account. Over your 30 years of experience, you've identified 5 shifts that companies kind of need to make right now in order to have that competitive advantage. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think the main thing we have to think about is that this is not a space problem or a real estate problem, it's a business problem. And so in the case that we can make sure that we're focusing on what is right for business, our implementation of that strategy through location design, through workplace design, through those different things, then we're really meeting the needs of our clients and of the people who employ us.
So you're talking about workspace right now, but also add to that, what about technology and all the changes
Clearly,
there?
technology, location strategy. We talk a lot about employee experience. We talk about customer experience in our spaces. We talk about engagement and those kinds of things that actually make work work. Rather than just the height of a panel or who gets an office and who doesn't. It's really about how do we make people work better. It's about human performance. That's what it's about.
Speaking of human performance and employee engagement, what about well-being? That is a very hot topic in today's world about trying to make sure that everybody is on the same page and kind of thinking about that sort of, is there such a thing as work-life balance? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's kind of more like work-life blend, right?
Exactly.
So we don't have the 9 to 5. You'll work. I mean, we all work long hours these days, but we'll take some time off in the afternoon. Surveys show that a lot of people take a lot of time during the day to do personal things, but they work in the evening. So the blending, I think, is real. I think that because of technology and because we're a digital society, we tend to work more than we used to. And so, and I think that the younger generation is pushing back on that a little bit and saying, I want more life in my life and not just work. And so I think it's not an employer's responsibility to make their workforce healthy, but to give them options to choose to be healthy. So good
that's
food
the difference.
choice.
It's really the choice that they're giving employees.
Right. You're right. So it's food choices, good healthy food choices, use the stairs instead of the elevator, access to natural light, timing, the hours that you work, lots of things that can help employees balance their own lives. And it's a critical choice that people make these days for where they're going to work.
That's a key component of where they're going to work. You also suggest that companies need to ingrain that co-working mentality in their real estate strategy. Can you expand on that?
I think there's two things there. I think part of it is, as a corporate owner or occupier, one of your options should be to have a co-working site that you don't own or operate. You just have a monthly or hourly rental that you can give a card to an employee who can go and work there. And it might be closer to their home, or it might be in a place that you want to open a new facility and you're not ready for that yet. So having the co-working option is a critical part of, I think, of any strategy. But the other part is, in co-working spaces, you have a person who's called a community manager, and they help craft experiences for employees. And I think that's a really smart thing. It's almost a curation of your experience. And having that inside a corporation, I think, is going to be something we're going to be thinking a lot more about.
So are you saying that a lot of folks are not going to have their own cubicle, their own, where they put the pictures up and all of that? That's all changing?
It might change.
It might change.
Yeah, we're moving to a lot of non-assigned situations, but that really works for a certain component of people. There are people who need to have a place to sit down. I think an all or nothing scenario is just not feasible.
Right.
But there is a lot more. Since we are digital, we can move our pictures of our family with us wherever we go, So
we can be anywhere practically, right?
and breaking that ownership mentality about, I have to have my desk because it's my thing, I think is a hard thing, but it's important. It's really about access rather than ownership. Access to the right kinds of spaces. You don't have to own them, you just have to be able to get them when you need them.
And I think what you're talking about too, all of this is kind of relating to the fifth shift that you talk about, which is that agile organization.
Right.
And how can corporate real estate leaders do more of that?
Right, so agile comes out of the software development idea about deliberately coming together to work on something and then breaking apart to do individual work and then coming back together. It's this rapid prototyping, co-development kind of idea. And we're finding that works in other groups in the company, like HR or marketing, places like that, where this co-development that is deliberate together and then deliberate apart, that model works. And so we have to build workplaces that help foster that. And it's really about being mindful about how people move throughout their day. You can't just have a desk and be assigned and do everything there. So this agility idea is something that we have to have kind of peanut buttered throughout the space.
I love it. All right, Keith, a pleasure to have you with us here. I know you're participating in the summit here in Boston. Good to have you in town.
Thank you, Liz. It's good to meet you. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks so much for watching, everyone. We'll see you soon. Hello, everyone. I'm Liz Bruner, and welcome back to CNGtv. I'm joined right now on the set by one of my new CoreNet friends, Mike Briccato. Good to have you here this afternoon, Mike.
Thank you for having me.
You have had extensive experience working with Fortune 500 companies and sort of centralizing and streamlining all their real estate function. How do companies deal with all this big data today?
Well, it's an interesting question because at the end of the day, a lot of the issue is that there's too much data, right?
Yeah.
When we started this kind of whole initiative around technology and understanding data, it was really a battle to kind of find that data and then figure out ways to synthesize it and make something of it. Now it's really figuring out how do we filter out what's too much data and get something that's a little bit more practical with our clients.
And how do you do that? Because if you are drowning in data and there's so much there, how do you narrow that focus?
It's really about figuring out what is the data, what's the story that the data has to tell, right? So, and inevitably, all of our jobs are based on certain types of metrics or understandings of what we need to accomplish, and it's trying to figure out what is it that we need to demonstrate as value, whether it's us as a service provider or someone on the end user side, and then kind of reverse engineering what's the data that we need in order to kind of create and show those metrics. And then over time, we can show kind of continuous improvement of value or, cost reduction or whatever the case may be.
Speaking of cost, I mean, everyone tracks, per square foot, per employee, a bunch of other things. What's new on the horizon in terms of the CRE performance metrics?
It changes all the time.
Does it change every day?
Yeah, no, and metrics are one of those things. You can have a million different conversations and people always have a different perspective. But I think for now we're starting to see a lot more really around the utilization as we kind of continue to understand the co-working disruption. Not that it hasn't been around for a while, but that it's been really heavily focused on. And so I think as we continue to understand utilization and how much that cost is, I think that's going to continue to really drive some of the CRE metrics that we're looking at.
From your perspective, what are some of the common inefficiencies that might be hindering in performance or improving performance?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think we get bogged down sometimes, I think, by looking at, again, going back to too much data, too much metrics. And I think when we look at how we kind of pull together that data, pull together some of the information, it's really streamlining to what is going to demonstrate the right message, again, within the organization, but also from our perspective as a service provider of how we can add value. So it's really kind of trying to narrow down that focus.
Is there room for improvement?
There's always room for improvement, right? I mean, we always, like to try and think we're, the best at whatever we do in any, shape or fashion because people work so hard at it. But at the end of the day, you'd be lying to ourselves if you didn't recognize the fact that there's always some ability for room for improvement. So.
Well, I have to brag on Mike just a little bit because I understand you've been nominated by your chapter for the CoreNet Global Young Leaders Award, which is fantastic. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Why do you find CoreNet so valuable, and what would you say to other people about joining the membership?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I first started, and I was actually having this conversation earlier today with one of our new young leader members that just moved up from the DC market, and I said to him, it's really about investing in the community within CoreNet itself, right? And I think we all come here to learn new things, kind of create that network, but we're all here to help each other build value and support one another. It takes time. There's no two ways about it, and it's certainly an investment. When you think about having to do the volunteering of the committees and attending all these events, but my advice to people is just stick with it. And really, if you truly care about what the cause of the organization is and help kind of drive that message, you'll find a way to get value out of it.
Well, you're from Boston, and here we are in Boston, which is kind of nice to have the Global North American Summit here.
It's weird. Not having to come on a plane to be here, which is exciting. Although it was a 30-minute Uber ride, even though it was
there you go.
Not that far away. So.
Well, thanks for stopping by, Mike. We wish you continued success.
Thank you.
And good luck with the CoreNet stuff too.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time. Hello, everyone. I'm Liz Bruner, and I'm so happy to be joined by one of the most amazing young people you will ever meet. At just 12 years old, listen to this. He's been called the most motivational kid in America, has more than 250,000 Instagram followers, and he's an author and an artist, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Say hello to Naeem Hudson, joining us in the studio here at CNGtv.
Hello everyone, how are you doing?
I love it. So you have a nickname of King Na. How did you get that nickname?
It's not really an interesting story. I was sitting in the car with my father and he told me that if I'm serious about motivational speaking, I'll have to pick a name. So Naeem is a part of my name, like Na. So Naeem, you hear it in the beginning, and all of my family members just called me King. So
Well, that's pretty special.
I just was like, King, nah. My father was like, well, I'm older than you, so wouldn't that make me the king and you're the prince because you're my son? And I said, no, I think I'll just stick with King now.
You were holding your own already at this young age. You spoke this morning on happiness and motivation. What makes you happy? What motivates you?
Waking up in the morning, knowing that I'm blessed enough to wake up and just, you know, breathe in air. And another thing that makes me happy is just being myself. A lot of people just put this shadow over themselves, or they have to pretend to be something they're not. And I feel like just being natural adds a big part of happiness and confidence in my life, because I know that I'm happy with myself.
But you know, in today's world, that's really hard for adults, let alone someone your age at 12, when there's so much peer pressure. So how do you hold on to that sort of focus?
Most of the time, especially with peer pressure and different kids, because, you know, kids are mean.
Kids are mean sometimes, you're right.
From talking from experience.
Yeah, I'm speaking from experience too. I'm a little older than you, but yeah.
They're just professional at jokes and making people feel bad about themselves. But one way to deal with that is just to realize that you have self-value. And most of the people who make fun of you or tease you, they're probably going through something too, at home or with their parents. It's something that brings down their confidence, and it makes them happier to bother somebody else. I know it may seem impossible, but everyone has insecurities.
Absolutely
and they
right.
make that insecurity feel good by bringing other people down and bringing up their insecurities.
Who motivates you?
I have a lot of inspirations. I'd say most of it comes from my father, because when I first started motivational speaking, he didn't want me to be on camera. He didn't like the idea of having his son on camera and in public. But then after we just transitioned and I became a professional motivational speaker, he's always been there to encourage me, especially when I've been nervous or afraid. He's always been there to, you know, lift my spirits up.
I love the fact that at 12 years old, I'm a professional speaker. At my age, I'm a professional speaker now too, but I think that's really wonderful. You have a couple of books out, but your first one is titled We Are All Kings, a motivational guide for parents. What do you mean we are all kings?
What I meant by that, it's a motivational guide for young men my age, and I'm also coming out soon. I'm also coming out with one soon called We Are All Queens for young ladies to give them motivation too. But for different kids who are going through peer pressure or bullying, or who are afraid to travel and, you know, embrace their dreams, that book's basically a motivational guide to help not only the child but the parent, you know, deal with those confidence issues and how to talk to their child about expressing their dreams. Because, you know, sometimes it may seem unreal. I mean, think about your 4-year-old running up to you saying, I want to be on camera and talk. It's like, and especially with kids today. I mean, we're so inconsistent with so many things. We say we want to do something, then we don't practice it, or we say we want to be something, or we don't really like dedicate our time to it. But it's all about being patient, and it's all about having that dedication enough to work with your child.
How'd you get so wise?
I don't know.
You don't know. All right. You're 12 years old. You've already accomplished so much. What do you want to be when you grow up?
When I grow up, I would like to continue my motivational speaking, and I'd like to advance it into higher places. But I'd also like to be a successful gamer, because if it's one thing that us kids are consistent about, it's playing video games.
You got that right.
And I have interest in playing basketball. I found a certain love in it recently. And, you know, it's just been very interesting from there. So I'm practicing, I'm getting better, and that's some things that I'd like to do.
How tall are you right now?
I'm 5'4".
5'4", so we got a few more inches to gain, right? Yeah. But there are some shorter basketball players, and you're only 12, so we've got time.
Not done growing yet.
You're not done growing. You need to eat your spinach, okay? Like Popeye. King Na, thanks so much for stopping by. A real pleasure. We wish you much continued success, joy, and happiness.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Make it a great day, everyone. I'm Liz Bruner. Welcome back to the CNGtv studios. I'm Liz Bruner, and I'm joined right now by Paul Thurman, who is sort of an expert in co-creation labs, and among other things has so many degrees behind his last name, I can't even give them all to you right now. Paul Thurman, you have extensive experience in innovation and design thinking in particular. And I'm fascinated by that because, let's face it, businesses change, there are so many challenges. It's rapidly changing all the time. How do you help real estate executives keep up with that in terms of design thinking.
You're absolutely right. It's in businesses beyond real estate. It's actually interesting to note that things get very solid very quickly, and it's hard to pivot and hard to move. So how do you take these battleships or aircraft carriers and get them to really turn on a dime?
Good analogy, yeah.
The bottom line is a lot of businesses depend on the senior executives or maybe outside consultants to come in and have new ideas and new thinking, when in fact, a very simple, straightforward process can help anybody be innovative, from the guy in the mailroom to the chief executive officer.
How so? When you say be innovative, how so?
Because it's a very simple process to follow. Three simple steps.
Okay.
Let's look at our customers, let's look at our users and try to live their lives the way they live them with our services and products. All too often in business, we think about what we provide to the market or what we supply, not really what our customer, what they want or how they express it. The old story is a carpenter doesn't want a 1/4-inch drill, the carpenter actually needs a 1/4-inch hole. So you think about needs versus how people supply to those needs. So can we look at our users and our customers, our corporate real estate beneficiaries, if you will, and say, what do they want? What do they value? What are they doing that they have to work around that doesn't work for them, or that they struggle with but will never tell us? Well, one way to do that is to simply go in and get inspired by the first I I'll talk about, get inspired by the way they lead their lives and have experiences with our services and our products. So that's step one. Go out and observe our users, especially those that try to do workarounds or do things really differently, but we wouldn't notice if we weren't paying attention to them. That's part one. Part two, once you develop some insights from that inspiration, then start to create ideas. Oh, well, if the carpenter wants a hole of a certain size, then maybe we need to create drill bits of lots of different sizes, or drills that go really fast or really slow. We start to think about, how do I help the whole creation business, not the drill motor business? In much of the same way I talk to corporate real estate executives and ask them, are you really in the real estate business? Or perhaps you're in the occupant safety and happiness business.
Or I say relationship business as well.
Precisely. Yes. And if you're in a relationship business, like any relationship, you have to think about how the other side perceives what you're doing, not just what you bring to it.
Exactly.
So how do I ideate or create a lot of ideas to help me address some of those needs that I noticed when I was getting my insights from my inspiration? So inspiration first, then ideation.
And what's the third I?
The third I is, well, if I come up with some good ideas and I can test them and see which ones might work best, what do I then implement? What do I actually place my bet on? And what's interesting is in a lot of corporate environments and corporate strategies, we tend to place really big bets on really small ideas or really small strategies. For example, corporate real estate is a great example. We'll take a lot of money, millions of dollars, and place it on a bet with one facility or with one location or with one large group of employees. So corporate real estate executives are used to making really big bets over long time periods. What happens if we made that a little bit smaller and a little bit cheaper? Let's look at 100 different things that we could try that are not so expensive in terms of millions of dollars, and test a few things. How do we experiment? Once we experiment, we can try 100 things, fail at maybe 95 of them, but that'll get us very quickly to the 5 things that we really want to implement and place bigger bets on.
It's innovation in a fast lane.
Innovation in a fast lane, and what's great about it is anybody can do it. It doesn't require you to take that 1 or 2 showers in your lifetime where you have the aha moment once in a lifetime or once in a career, but how do I observe? What do I get from watching my users interact with my services and products? What ideas do I generate from that? And then what can I really quickly test and then implement by not placing a big bet on one idea, but having 100 ideas, testing a lot of them very quickly, and then implementing the ones that really show promise.
I love that. 3 I's. Anybody can use the 3 I's.
Anybody can use the 3 I's.
Any industry, right?
I think so.
Awesome.
I think so. And it's a pleasure working with the corporate real estate executives here in Boston and learning how they're becoming more agile and using these types of innovation frameworks to turn their battleships more quickly as well.
They do. Awesome. Great to see you. Great to have you on the set with us
Thank you so
today.
much for having me.
Thanks so much for coming to Boston, too.
All right. Thank you.
Awesome. And thanks for joining us once again on CNGtv. I'm Liz Bruner. Hello everyone, I'm Liz Bruner and welcome back to CNGtv. I'm joined right now by Peggy Roth, who comes from us from London today with Leesman. It's good to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
You are in charge of all the development at Leesman, and you guys you collect a lot of research and put all this data together. And from what I understand, you surveyed something like 300,000 people or organizations, and the responses you got from these 2,000 workplaces created this amazing database about workplaces. What did you learn?
Oh, we've learned a lot.
I
So,
bet.
yes. So actually, I need to correct you on the numbers because we're collecting so much data with such a speed. We're actually over 400,000 across 3,000 different workplaces already. So how we then use that data is we crunch the numbers, we look at what are the things that work in workplace and what are the things that don't.
Yes.
And I mean, I could go on forever.
Okay, give me the top things that are working and the top things that are not working today.
So one of the things is that there's no one concept that will always work.
No one size fits all, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And there's this massive debate has been going on around, for example, open plan environments, which, you know, you'll find the headlines saying the open plan environment was devised by Satan in the deepest caverns of hell. Now, that's true for some open environments, but an open plan environment, it's such a broad concept. It can work really well if it's done well. It can be really poor if it's done poorly. So actually, when we look at our database, out of the top 10 workplaces, the top 10 performing workplaces in our database, 9 are predominantly open environments.
That's
so,
fascinating.
but then at the same time, the bottom 10 are also open environments. So, you know, any concept can be good or bad depending on how it's done, basically.
And is it primarily the culture that dictates the best workplace, or is it the work that they do?
It's a mix of everything. I mean, because we essentially measure employee workplace experience.
Yes.
So we measure how employees experience their workplace, and that's impacted by obviously the workplace itself, the actual infrastructure that you have, but it's also then impacted by so many other things. It's impacted by, you know, the culture, leadership. It's impacted by how people behave in that physical environment.
What about generational? I mean, sometimes we've got millennials, we've got baby boomers, we've got Gen Z coming up. How does that impact the workplace?
So that's actually one of my favorite topics, because there's been so much discussion around the generation Y or Z. They're coming, they're very different, they have different requirements, and if we basically don't meet their requirements, you know, the workplace is going to fail, or the organization is not going to be successful. But actually what our data shows is that the youngest employees within organizations, they're consistently most satisfied with their workplaces. They have the best experience, and they also have the lowest requirements, which is simply explained by the fact that if you're new, if you're young, you're in the beginning of your career, you don't do as many different things. You have a fairly simple work profile.
Yes.
And therefore, it's much easier for a workplace to basically fulfill your needs compared to someone who's you know, been in you know, further along in their career, and they do a lot of different things. They go from meetings to video conferences to focused work to collaborating to being creative, and they need much more from the workplace. So basically, what we tend to say is, based on the data, it looks like the younger employees, they have the lowest requirements. So if you design your workplaces based on their needs, not only are you only focusing on a third of the population or the third of your workforce, you're also focusing on the population that has the lowest requirements.
What would you say is the number one obstacle to productivity, no matter what the generation is?
Yeah, so it's our data has shown, the research that we have done has shown that it's the things that have the biggest impact on whether we can work productively or not is actually whether we feel that we can do our individual work. And it makes sense, and individual focused work is something that everyone does. Across our 430,000 respondents, over 90% of the respondents say that individual focused work is important to me. And it actually also has the biggest impact on whether we feel that we can work productively or not. It's not to say that collaboration is important. It's not important. It's definitely important, but it needs to be balanced. And actually what I think has happened quite a bit during the past years within our industry is that so much focus has been placed on collaboration and creating these spaces to bring people together, which is really important. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's sometimes done on the cost of individual work. So we cannot forget that people will still need to do their individual work, even though they're collaborating and exchanging ideas. You know, the knowledge creation process, it has phases where we collaborate, we're brainstorming, and then it has phases when we really need to just, you know, do our thing and get things done.
Are you an open office plan person, or are you a fixed wall person?
So I personally would never ever work in an organization that gave me my own office and said that's where you work. It would not work for me. I can't. I don't know whether I'm a little bit weird on that, but I can't focus if it's quiet. I focus best if there's a buzz around me. So like a cafe type of area.
That works for you.
That works for me because the buzz around me helps me really focus on what I'm doing. So I'm definitely more open, and I'm definitely for variety, different settings for different activities, so that you basically empower the employee to choose where do I want to do this activity, based on the activity that I'm doing, the mood I'm in. Where do I do this activity best in this situation?
Where's your productivity spot, right?
Exactly.
Excellent,
Yeah.
Peggy. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Really
My pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you later. Hello everyone, I'm Liz Bruner coming to you from CNGtv studios in the Heinz Convention Center in Boston. Many of us are familiar with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the incredible work that they're doing all around the world. And my guest right now, Slade Bedford, is on the Gates team. I love that. And you're kind of reinventing the workplace experience, something that is even more crucial. Tell us about the project that you're working on.
Yeah, so we've really kind of had this conversation over the last couple of years, kind of this catalytic thinking about how we can use space to really influence the behaviors of the
culture,
foundation.
right? Yeah.
The culture, and we've really found out over time that space can impact behaviors, and behaviors over time becomes the culture of the foundation. And so we had a great opportunity a couple years ago to partner with a couple groups at the foundation. One was the Gates 2025 group, which was a group that reported directly to the CEO. And they were looking at who do we want to be, what's our identity in the year 2025, both internally and externally. So that group really started thinking about what do people think of us and what do we think of ourselves, where do we want to go. So we saw that as an opportunity to start this really great conversation about how can we use space to leverage that and partner with them, along with our HR team that was thinking about this kind of cultural journey that they were on to look at how do we create an environment that really can create impact in the world. And so my team has been on this journey with those two groups from the foundation to think about space completely differently.
Wow, and so now you're actually in the sort of testing process of this?
Yeah.
How is that going?
Great, I mean, so it's all about this experimental mindset.
Yes.
And we need to experiment in order to inform how we want to think about living with each other in our space. So through the last couple of years, we had to do it all kind of started with a big request of us in global facilities to move people around, to get teams together in areas across the foundation. And what we were finding is that we had this problem that we knew about around silos. And so teams were not talking to each other, they didn't know what each other was doing. And so when the requests came to us to move these teams together, we felt like we were contributing to the problem. And so what we did, we went ahead with that because that was the request at the time. But what we ended up with as we moved people around the space was a large space in the foundation that we wanted to experiment with. And so we completely gutted it, and we started really thinking about how we can live differently into a space and put people in there, not that worked as a team necessarily, but that had a common purpose, and that was the key.
What's been the feedback then from the employees that you've blown everything up, you've put people together who were not necessarily on the same team? What's been their feedback?
Well, the feedback is that they don't want to go back to the old way of working.
Interesting.
I think they really found that when they bring different groups together that have a common purpose, that they can actually do real extraordinary things. And so by opening up the space, looking at technology different, looking at furniture differently, looking at just the way of living differently, they can actually increase their impact in the world. And so they collaborate better, they have more breakthrough in their ideas, they have those inspiring creative spaces that can create those aha moments that allow them to do anything.
Are you going to try and replicate this anywhere else?
Absolutely. So this is informing us on what we're going to be doing in the future. We got approval to build a third building on our campus. And so this will continue to evolve and we'll continue to experiment to ultimately inform how we're going to set up the entire campus as well as the new building.
It's amazing. I know you told me a little while ago that you've been with the Gates Foundation for 4 years now. Why does it speak to your heart so much?
Well, anytime you're able to work for an organization that has a true impact in the world, the way that I connect with it is beyond my imagination when I entered there. I got an opportunity to work there, and I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, but when I got there, all of a sudden I was able to really see how what I did in facilities and construction and real estate actually saved lives.
Yeah, and it mattered.
And it mattered.
Yeah.
Everything that I'm doing right now actually enables the people that are doing the work in the field to do their best work and to show up as their best selves.
And isn't that what we all want? We love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. A pleasure to have you here,
thank you
Slade.
so
Thank
much.
you so much. We wish you continued success.
I appreciate it.
And thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time here on CNGtv. I'm Liz Bruner. Hello everyone, I'm Liz Bruner, and welcome back to our CNGtv studios here at the Heinz Convention Center in Boston. I am joined right now by Stuart Apley, who has said corporate real estate could take a page or two from Silicon Valley playbook. I loved that when you said that. And I should mention you are from Silicon Valley, right?
That's right,
okay.
the area, that's right.
But you really are talking about AI and machine learning. And what do you mean though when you say that they should take a playbook or a page out of the playbook from Silicon Valley?
It's really about the innovation, the thought about innovation, having teams set up, having that mindset around digital mindset. It's changing, CRE is changing, but it's been slow. And a lot of it is due to outside influences coming in now that are really helping push the corporate real estate and commercial real estate environments forward, but it just needs to happen quicker.
You've had an innovative pilot project where you're kind of focused on leveraging that machine learning to sort of just simplify the ease of the workload. What's the reaction been from humans as you've been putting this project together?
So far it's been good because people are recognizing that it's helping them. It's making the employee experience better and quicker for them. And it's not.
I'm hearing a but.
Well, but it's not replacing their jobs yet, right? So as we try to say, AI is about augmented intelligence, helping make people efficient, automating, making better decisions, automating manual tasks, leveraging, opening them up for more knowledge-based work. So far what we have done have not replaced jobs, and there hasn't been a lot of pushback. And I think, you get a lot of people today are used to chatbots and Alexa and other AI kind of base, and you're starting to see more acceptance of it too, I think.
I loved what you used. You said augmented intelligence. I think that's a really key word when you're talking about AI altogether and machine learning.
Right. Really helping us do our jobs better.
And it's interesting to see how many people are doing Alexa and all of those things. I know there's a commercial on that I love watching where it's Alexa, and Alexa, your wife says you're doing a good job, and I just think it's such a sweet way. I'm scared to death of it, I have to be honest with you. I'm not sure I want it, but can you share with us some really unusual innovation and invention that you've developed at CBRE?
I think we're doing a lot of things around IoT, blockchain. We've done some pilots around blockchain, trying to get the value and understand. We've been testing it. There's still a lot of work to be done because it's a whole ecosystem that has to happen. You can't just do it alone. You need everybody to participate. So I think that's one of the more forward thinkings we're doing, but a lot around artificial intelligence, machine learning. There's a lot of happening within different business groups across the enterprise.
Okay, for someone like myself, who's a little nervous about AI and machine learning, what can you say to help ease my mind and ease other people's minds about using an Alexa or using some of this stuff?
Give it a try. If you're on the internet today, you got to be conscious, you got to be careful, but and there are a lot of issues around privacy, but you just need to try it and give it a chance, understand what it does, what it can't do. Read up on it, try to read about, what are the risks and, where you should be going, but, give it a try, is really all I would say.
Clearly you're very passionate about this,
Yeah,
and what do you find most fascinating about it?
It's really leveraging. I've always been a data person, and it leverages data. It's really, instead of having rules-based programs, it's all about the data, leveraging what's happened, and personalization for us to really have space that's personal to us, or things that we do that's connected to what we do every day. I'm passionate about that, and it's I think there's more, again, augmenting our intelligence, helping us work smarter and better. I think the potential is huge.
Can't imagine what the world's going to be like 10 years, 20 years, 100 years from now, right? Oh my gosh, be crazy.
Changing fast.
Stuart, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
stopping
Appreciate
by.
the
Really
time.
appreciate it very much, and continued success to you.
Great, thank you.
And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Welcome back, everyone, to CNGtv. I'm Liz Bruner, and joining me in our studio today from the CoreNet Global Summit North America is Suzanne Mehta. Good to have you here, Suzanne.
Thank you.
You have more than 15 years of experience in delivering marketing differentiating strategies for Cushman Wakefield, and I love this title. You are the Chief Experience Officer, with the key being Experience Officer, exactly. And your role is to really kind of establish a vision and strategy for the user experience.
Yeah.
What are some of your more surprising discoveries to date?
Yeah. I think the biggest learning is how incredibly important it is to design with the human in mind. We have, as an industry, been very focused on buildings. And as a core competency, that makes sense.
Sure.
And I think the emerging trend and the emerging need really is how will we start to think about the human beings that occupy those buildings in a more empathetic way. So that is where kind of my background has really, come into play, thinking about user journeys, borrowing some of those principles from the consumer products world, from the hospitality world, and thinking about how we start to design employee experiences and occupant experiences.
That's a shift.
A huge shift.
A huge shift.
But very relatable.
Absolutely relatable. Yeah. You have experience in, some high-end luxury companies, Hyatt, L'Oreal, Procter & Gamble. How do you go about uncovering what the right path is for each enterprise? Because they're all different.
Yeah. There's a few things I like to think about. The first is, what are our clients' goals? What is the corporate culture that we're trying to live up to?
Sure.
What is part of our DNA? Where do we want to go as a company? What do we stand for? Those are the types of questions I like to ask first, because the workplace environment needs to ladder to that. First and foremost, what we say in the marketplace for any given employer needs to actually come to life in the workplace environment and support employees in that same way. From a more kind of tactical perspective, we look at a combination of kind of quantitative data and qualitative data. So quantitative data, taking a large sample of occupants or employees in our case, and thinking about what workplace drivers are there that really move the needle. Is it about your food and beverage experience at work? Is it about comfort? Is it about wellness? Is it about your ability to interact with your colleagues? What are the drivers that make you happy, and what are the drivers that matter most from a quantitative perspective?
Yeah, I would imagine the millennial mindset has been one of those drivers that has been key to kind of moving that needle. How do you assist companies in working around all of that right now?
Sure. So there are some attributes of millennials that we know make them very unique in the marketplace, but there are also some attributes that have now kind of become common, right? Like the need for flexibility in the workplace. I think if you were to ask a Gen X and a baby boomer and a millennial, they might all give you similar answers. And that is really because that mindset has permeated. It may have started with millennials, but it now has permeated through the other generations.
Okay.
So I like to, kind of advise my clients, let's think less about age and demographics, and let's think more about the predominant mindsets, interests, need states of your employees, and let's design against those instead.
Okay, now let's take it to the next level, which is are the Gen Z folks.
Yeah.
What is that doing for this next generation, and how does that sort of impact all the things that you were just saying?
Yeah. So similarly, I again would want to kind of cluster them based on their interests and less on their age. But what I think is really interesting about Gen Z is that they are the first truly digital natives. So millennials, they kind of
they were kind of
adapted.
Yeah, they adapted.
They adapted, and they adapted
we
really
adapted.
well.
Our generation.
I did too.
Our generation
I'm a Y,
adapted.
or I'm an X. So I get that. I've lived with it and without it. Whereas Gen Z are born into it. Snapchat and texting and WhatsApp. It's the immediacy and the ability to get everything on your mobile phone. That has really become table stakes. So I think that will play a big impact in how we design experiences moving forward.
And it makes you wonder what would be next, right? I mean, it's just everything happens so fast.
Yeah.
Suzanne, a pleasure to have you here. We wish you continued success in helping your clients run at peak performance.
Thank you.
Thank you
Liz.
so much. A pleasure. And thank you for joining us as well. I'm Liz Bruner. Welcome everyone to CNGtv. I'm Liz Bruner, and I'm so excited to have my next guest here joining me because he's from Harvard University and we're in Boston, so just across the river, right?
That's right.
Boy, has the workplace changed. This is Dr. Ethan Bernstein from Harvard University. I should say you're a professor there. And you study the impact of employees' activities, their routines, their behaviors, and their performance. Really interesting work. What are some of the biggest trends that you're seeing in corporate real estate in terms of how technology is transforming things?
So my research, even more specifically, is about the increasingly transparent workplace, its impact on all those things, on activities, behaviors of employees, and then the productivity of those individuals. And so, I mean, one of the big trends we're seeing is both more and more transparent workplaces, otherwise I wouldn't have a research agenda, but also the sensors and data that come from those sensors on how people are doing their work.
Well, and a lot of people are scared about that because then it brings into all these privacy issues when you think about computer logins and retina scans and all of these things. What does that mean for employee privacy today?
Well, here's maybe one way to look at it, because privacy is a very broad topic.
It's a very broad term, yes.
So let's talk about it this way. Data can really be used for one of two things.
Okay.
It can be used to control employees, and we tend to not like that and find ways of being creative.
Yes, I understand what you meant.
Human ingenuity is very good at finding ways of being creative around those means of control. Or we can use data to learn. And perhaps one of the ways in which we distinguish between whether or not we're controlling or learning is who's getting the data. Is the data going to my manager, my peers, the people who can ultimately wield influence over me, or is the data coming to me, in which case, like my Fitbit, I can actually learn to change my behaviors in productive ways.
Right.
So that's how privacy comes into this. If we really believe that this data is being collected by others, because it's often being paid for by others, then we have a privacy problem that typically results in having bad data, not good data.
There's been a lot of talk about AI here at the summit over the last few days. How will that support employees in the future, in your opinion?
So that's actually a bit far afield from my research. So I'll mention what I've been hearing today, which is
what do you think?
That we have data sets that are too large for human beings to process real time. And so in order to keep up with that curve, Mary Meeker has this curve of data we're collecting that she presents in her annual review. Keep up with that curve, the only way we can do so is by having some kind of computer-assisted analyses, and that's really what we're talking about is machine learning-based approaches or AI-based approaches to looking at that data.
Corporate real estate is continuing trying to prove a direct correlation between the changes in the physical workplace and the measurable business outcomes. In any of your research, will technology enable us to finally kind of get there to merge those things with the data that you're talking about?
My view is that we're going to have to deal with intermediate outcomes for a while.
Okay.
So the paper that Stephen Turbin and I wrote that we were just presenting earlier today about the open workspace, the open office, we look at interaction, not performance.
Okay.
Because interaction is something we can actually measure very clearly with the data and tie it directly back to the change in the physical space that prompted it. We do a pre-post experiment in which we show that. I think it would be very hard to use performance instead of interaction and then try to generalize it to other environments, because at every turn you're going to say, well, that's different in my context, that's different with my task, that's different in my industry, that's different in my geography. And so intermediate outcomes are probably going to be the recipe of choice for a little while. And then we can have the conversation about whether or not increased interaction or decreased interaction, in this case, increased or decreased face-to-face interaction, yields higher or lower performance in my context. But until we have that first step, I think it's going to be hard to have that second.
You just mentioned about speaking here at the summit, and you were talking about leveraging this data to create this dynamic environment. What's the top thing you could say that would create a dynamic environment? I know there's so many.
Oh, well, to be honest, most of my research is not about that.
Okay.
So my research is more about the ways in which changes in the environment can change the way we interact, that we communicate, we collaborate. And so if you want to define dynamic as interactive, then at the very least I can say that we've seen through our data and through our research that going to open spaces actually reduces the face-to-face interaction. But even that could be more dynamic because it was replaced by online interaction, electronic communication. And is that more or less dynamic? I suppose that depends on how you define dynamic.
How do you define dynamic?
Well, I would take a networks-based approach to that. So how many diverse individuals or nodes I'm drawing on to make decisions. And in that case, electronic gives me access to a lot more people than I could ever have face-to-face. But then again, we're sitting here in the middle of a floor with lots of face-to-face interaction, so it feels very dynamic in here too.
Right.
So part of the word dynamic, it depends on how you define it.
What do you love about this research and this work? I know you're very passionate about it.
You know, we've spent so many decades as academics looking at self-reported data, survey data, to try and address some of the questions and concerns that I think real estate professionals have, or for that matter, people who work in these spaces have. And it's very exciting to me that we now live in an environment in which, through human eyes and these other companies that are providing data and sensors and all this sort of quantified workplace, quantified self, it's very exciting that we can take that quantification and try to finally answer some of these questions that have been, for too long, I think, left to intuition, opinion.
The clipboard walking around.
Yes, I mean, it was our best way of doing studies.
Right.
But we now have a way of doing studies that gets us a better answer, and that's very exciting.
It is very exciting.
It'll never be perfect, not a perfect answer, but at least a better answer.
A better answer. Professor Bernstein, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate your insights. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time here on CNG TV.